So, question from yesterday. The questioner asks, how do you think about the apparent dichotomy between the acceptance of what is and the ambition to change ourselves and the world for the better?
Valerie, can I just briefly speak a
Yes.
little word to that? I mean, I would say that on the whole, that's where we start. We have to start from the way things are. And practice and everything begins there, And but that is, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of, say, the Eightfold Path, begins with what is, and it moves. The idea is to be moving towards total liberation from suffering for all beings. But you can't commence that really without starting from how things are. And maybe, I mean, there's another side as well. I want to hear what you have to say, Valerie. But how much of suffering is actually resistance to how things are? Maybe that's not the entirety of it, but Anyway, well, what do you think, Valerie?
Yeah, that's what came to mind for me right away when I heard this. Is just that acceptance and change go absolutely hand in hand, and we can say, yeah, you have to begin there, but in a way, it's this one dynamic, possibly recursive process all the way through. And I would agree that for ourselves, we can certainly say this for ourselves. And all the more clearly with practice, that the source of suffering is resistance to things as they are. And when that space comes to really be with things as they are in a more of a space of the unconditioned, but certainly just things as they are, and yourself and your own experience as it is. There's another question that I think will speak to this, but this willingness to be with that really acts as a solvent. That's our sitting, and an opening then also for this impulse to help. There's, change isn't just something that we go out and do. It's happening through, almost functioning, using us. I mean, that's not to say we don't have to really face this and think about it and find what's ours to do. This world needs that. But yes, these absolutely go hand in hand all along the way.
Thank you, Valerie. Beautiful.
I mean, it's not so satisfying in a way. It's, of course, these are such short answers, and that doesn't mean, it's simply put to rest. It's just what's coming up sort of in the immediate moment. But this practice does plunge us into that, I mean, in another tradition, it might be called already and not yet, and we're always living in that. It's so life-giving and at the same time agonizing. You know, we long for a better world, and we sure better, you know, keep that fire burning.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Valerie. Should we take another?
We could try.
Okay.
Next question. What can you say about Samadhi? Is it a state you drop in and stay there for a time of your practice, like a nice warm bathtub?
This is for you, Henry.
Well, no, I think so.
I do.
I mean, I could say, you know, what we can say about Samadhi. What the question is, what can you say about Samadhi? Is it a state you drop into for a time, like a nice warm bathtub? I mean, I think it can be. Yeah, that's I think in the, you know, in the tradition of, in various schools of Buddhism, it's acknowledged that there are various kinds and even many kinds of samadhi, but the word means, I think the etymology is something like sort of everything held together or something like that. It's translated sometimes as, or paraphrased, I guess, as sort of unification of mind, that there's some sense of wholeness, of awareness, often in samadhi. I mean, the way I kind of think a way of understanding it from more of a sort of Western psychological perspective is that it's akin to what are known as flow states. I think generally, you know, features of it are that somehow there's a quality of effortlessness, you know, that almost a sort of practice happening by itself. I think it's true that it often seems to just kind of switch on. I don't know whether you find that, Valerie. I mean, I think the same is probably true for mindfulness. I mean, in the Satipatthana Sutra, you know, which is this sort of great document about practice, from the meditation practice from the Pali Canon. You know, samadhi is seen as something that kind of naturally evolves from mindfulness, as one of the factors of awakening. But I don't know. I suspect that people can drop into samadhi, you know, without a whole lot of mindfulness practice at times, and that it's not necessarily a clear set of stages. You know, you kind of I mean, you know, if you're familiar with some of the descriptions of samadhi, you sort of know if you're finding it, or if you're dropping into it, because it's just so easy. Sort of everything becomes easy, and it can be like you just want to sit forever, and it can also be that you become aware of it, and oops, you're out of it. You know, that's perfectly natural, and you know. And luckily, Zen doesn't have an idea that you have to kind of cultivate it and stay in it forever. It's sort of, I think we acknowledge that it'll sort of have a natural ebb and flow, and that's all right. I don't know. What would you add anything, Valerie? I'm sure
I just appreciate, you know, this landscape of samadhi that acknowledges there are different qualities and sort of different flavors. And I mean, practice is so dynamic. You know, Dogen called just zazen flowing. But I think, you know, it's one thing would be to read about it, and there's a kind of recognition in these words, like effortlessness, spaciousness, sitting is sitting. You know, timelessness, the quality of everything, whole world sitting. I mean, that might start with just sitting down and the, you know, all the furnishings in the room are sitting. And, you know, so yeah, it seems sort of like a wonderful bottomless exploration in terms of practice. There's also this quality where things as they are. You know, that somebody on one of our Q&As, I remember, asked if Samadhi is something just on the cushion. You know, no. I mean, maybe in term, you know, in some technical sense, you know, maybe language gets so open that it becomes meaningless. But I think it's helpful here to recognize and this kind of abiding, resting, this very lively resting, just nothing extra. I was talking to a student just this week who's a Tai Chi student. And, you know, she's the one who a while ago spoke about the unadjusted step in Tai Chi, which I found so helpful. I mean, many people know about it, but it was kind of fresh for me. And then this time she spoke about how in Tai Chi it feels more secure if the muscles engage. Like you can kind of guide your steps and your movements. And there's just this tendency to want to do that as though it will help. This effort, this sort of added effort. And it doesn't help. In fact, the process is really somehow being able to release that, you know, and just be less and less guarded. You know, it's so bare. And then the movement is moving. There, you know, I sometimes feel in my own sitting and in my living, like I'm walking around with an extra head on, you know, and it's so freeing to just, you know, find that gone. This is talking around Samadhi now, but it seems relevant, this wonderful possibility that's really there for us in this practice to experience effortless effort. That's one aspect of Samadhi.
Yeah, that's lovely. And thank you for the reminder about it. Yes, not just on the cushion. Yeah. Maybe one last little footnote to it is like there's always seems to be some sense of like fulfillment in it. I think like you just don't need anything else. You know, sort of everything's already fulfilled. Reminding you know that famous line of Dogen's that the way is intrinsically accomplished. That sense, you know, it's already done, kind of thing. That seems to be a flavor in Samadhi quite often. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And, you know, even here in the midst of this fantastic practice that we're all doing, and this line that is so familiar, when you said it, something in my gut just released a little. It's just already accomplished. It's just an amazing, you know, there's nothing to do. And then this acceptance takes on another flavor also. It's not just accepting what's difficult. You know, it's already accomplished.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Valerie. Dan, should we try another?
Okay, next question. Questioner asks, Would you speak a bit about dual, non-dual practice? I find I'm able to be the loving witness to my experience when sitting, but I still feel the sense of witnessing. What does Zen address, or how does Zen address this?
Henry, you've talked about this a lot over the years in my hearing. Is there something you'd like to say?
I suppose I'd like to say that there's a place for both. I don't think we should beat ourselves up for sort of still being dualistic, you know. Yeah, I mean, but there's you know there's no doubt that, you know, any practice that is about that sort of features the notion of awakening or the experience of awakening probably acknowledges non-dual experience where, you know, the subject and object are no longer two things. Instead, there's some kind of experience of there being a more, you know, a all-pervasive unity of some kind. And, you know, that actually can be experienced in different ways, and we might say in different sort of depths even. You know, in a way, yeah, that's you know, when we're practicing with mu to sort of have a real direct experience of mu is to have, you know, there may be more to say and less to say, but a non-dual experience, you know. But I don't think somehow, I don't think that we should, as practitioners, be invalidating our dualistic experience as well. You know, that's, I don't know. What about you, Valerie?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm also, you know, brought to mind how the masters so skillfully use dualistic language to convey, you know, not just point to, but somehow convey a non-dual world. You know, so it's not just so black and white or yin and yang or, you know, one or two. Is this one? Is this two? There is, you know, I think it's possible to have really helpful experiences, very opening, clarifying experiences that, I don't know, in some sense there's an awareness, or you could say a witness, but ultimately that witness falls away and then may come back, you know. I mean, but I guess what happens is you see that they're just not two. There's not really, there isn't really a witness. But how helpful for our practice. And that's just my take on it. I mean, I've had, I remember Villegas Jaeger, really, you know, there is a witness. And I sometimes wondered if he meant that's all there is. So it's like another way of this unitive reality. I really don't know exactly what he meant. You knew him better, maybe. But yeah, I think there are different ways of sort of exploring and, you know, practicing with that observing mind, that one who watches. And it, yeah, I mean, like that phrase by Dogen, you take the backward step, shine the light inward. And what can happen with that, is no inside outside. We've spoken about that before. So I just, I would hold them lightly. And yeah, it's such a fantastic invitation to curiosity. And these words, dualistic and non-dual, are get a little bit reified. That can be so helpful, but if we're thinking, oh, I've got to drop all of this and get to that. Well, yeah, but there's no. I mean, the very thing that you're practicing may be exactly what's going to open that gate and help you realize with Manchushri, there's nothing outside the gate.
Oh, beautiful, yeah.
One more thing, you see, one aspect of this freedom and boundlessness that we keep trying to somehow open up and convey, and all of us are tasting it in some sense, participating in it for sure. Dualism isn't so problematic once it falls away. I remember, all those years where people would say, well, don't put any meaning there. It's the sound, but no content. Or stop thinking. Actually, thought is also it. It's so free. And it's just functioning. It's just all functioning. So the more we sort of welcome the dynamism and just explore it, I think the less caught we may be in some kind of sharp either or. I don't know.
Beautiful. Thank you, Valerie. Yeah. Dan, should we try another?
Okay, next question. Well, actually, this seemed a bit more like a criticism than a question, but nevertheless, I think you can interpret it how you want. Maybe it's a
great
practitioners.
Bring it on.
Question for Henry. Well, I guess I'd better write this as I'm obsessing about it. My mind, the wave, my emotions got the better of me. But would it be at all possible, Henry, and I know you're going through a healing process, etc., to actually sit with us through an entire day or period? There's just something disingenuous about speaking your calm words of meditative guidance, and then whoosh, you're gone. I'm glad I'm fine with your wife and kids in the background. It's life after all. That's the statement.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I'm here all the time, from 8:40 Pacific till 2:30 Pacific. Maybe you're thinking that if my camera's off, I'm not here. Possibly. I'm not sure. But I think both Valerie and I often turn our cameras off. Doesn't mean we're gone. I wonder whether some others have had this idea that I'm not here when the camera's off. Not the case. So that's quite interesting, really, that if somebody was thinking that and having some, experience of aversion around that, clearly sort of medium strength aversion, even a little sort of a doubt, in the teacher, like sort of almost hint of sort of, is he being a bit hypocritical or something? Like he's doing all this nice meditation guidance, but he's not actually sitting himself. That's quite interesting, because it's sort of making up a story based on a notion that is unproven. So that's really something to look at. I mean, I would say the way we would practice with that could be very instructive. The first thing to do is to recognize that something's going on. I think the question, well, the commentator said something about obsessing. Right. So if we're obsessing, or let's say perseverating, or having repetitive thinking, 99 times out of 100, there's likely to be an emotion going on. So then we want to check in. Is there some emotion here? And, you need to look into the body, because we're in practice, we're actually not so interested in the stories running through our minds. I mean, they may or may not be true. In this case, it sounds like probably it was something imaginary going on, but not. But the point isn't really, is the story true or not? It doesn't matter. To practice is not to be caught up in the stories. Is to recognize, oh yes, I've got a whole lot of cogitation going on around this, but actually the practice intervention is to feel the emotion as a sensation, to start to recognize the difference between story and sensation. See, stories can be triggered by actual life events, and they can be triggered by interpretations of life events. We don't know until we've checked it out whether our interpretations are correct, from a sort of, I mean, there's a lot of, great traditions of wisdom around this, this kind of thing, from classical philosophy in the West and Buddhism in the East, and other traditions. But, to look at our interpretations, see if they hold up. But aside from that, on the cushion, we don't do that. We look at the actual sensation in the body. If it's aversion, I mean, learn what it feels like. It might be a heat, it might be a tightness, it might be it might feel really uncomfortable. So really let yourself know that there's this, little ball of burning something in my chest or in my belly or in my midriff, and feel it. Let it. And I'm always saying, the thing is to recognize it and come to kind of know it as an experience, and somehow to get to the condition of allowing it. See, we don't want to be trying to get rid of it. That's actually piling aversion on aversion in a case like this. So how do I become tender? You sort of have to become tender. I find this, and I assume it's not my idea. I've heard it from others. I assume it's a verified process. To become tender around emotional difficulty is how we get to the point of allowing it fully. And often, not by any means always, I mean, often once we allow it fully, it's really welcome. And we're not welcoming it secretly so it will go away as a method for getting rid of it. We're just welcoming it because it's what is arising. Once we're doing that, I'd say a couple of things are quite likely to happen. The first is actually that whatever this discomfort has been becomes unexpectedly lovely. some kind of a sweet thing to behold. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that it kind of morphs into something else with a strong emotion, like the flavors of aversion. We might, for example, find there's actually some tender spot in there. There's some kind of hurt. It may hark back to some kind of, who knows what. I mean, betrayal or something, or, abandonment or something, some kind of heart pain. Mm. And so then that's not only, an instructive little process to have gone through, but it's a healing one, can be. And then we, the other thing that I suppose commonly might happen is that it simply dissolves. It simply dissolves, So that's all on that side. Now, on the sort of life event side, so to speak, which is Henry turning his camera off, is actually the event. I mean, I can speak to that a little bit, actually, because I used to sit in front of the screen. But when my neurological challenges that I've been, they're mild, but they're enough to be significant in some way, But it became very clearly, it was strong, clear advice that I received from various health practitioners, but also it's just my clear experience that sitting in front of a screen was really not helpful. And my brain would be more scrambled than usual after doing it. So I stopped. And then, turning off the camera was just sort of seemed like, why would I have this thing on when I'm not even sitting in front of the computer, And so that just became a kind of a habit. And actually now Mountain Cloud very kindly got me a sort of camera that's separate from the computer. But I just don't like sitting facing it. And I therefore, I mean, it's okay, but brief periods like now, and giving a talk, So basically, I just prefer to turn it off. And I actually like sitting facing the wall. If there's not a wall available, like right where we are here, actually, there's a sofa. I'm basically facing the sort of wall, the kind of lower wall of the sofa. I don't know what you call it, the sort of 18-inch high, face of the seat of the sofa. I just sit staring at that. And I turn on the mic when I feel it might be helpful to offer a little guided meditation, and turn it off again when I think I've completed that, and I'm just quietly sitting here. Yeah. I hope that's some help, I hope it's a help for all of us to, when we have these emotions come up, and especially if there's, perseverative thinking, assume that there's something in the body, that it's our great invitation as practitioners to come to know. Yeah. I don't know, Valerie, that was, I think, directed sort of to me. So you may not, we could just go on to another one, or you could.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for that. And also to the participant, the member of the Sangha who willingly just said what was going on so that it was an occasion for this really good teaching. And, this is so basic, the way these stories, whether they're true, so to speak, or not, is not the issue. We get so entangled. And you just described such a clear process for addressing that. And, this tenderizing that goes on. Yeah, just thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like if I was in greater neurological health, perhaps I'd keep the camera on, and that would be a help. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I do what you do. I also find myself, I prefer to turn it off just because of the setup I have here. It's, I don't have a lot of room. And so I just put off the video and sort of turn my computer sideways for sitting. And then, you know, turn it on just to bow after the bell. And I notice a lot of people make that choice, and then a number of people make the choice to leave it on. And I will say, when I catch just a glimpse, I've never really perused the sitting because I'm sitting with you, but you know, sometimes I'll want to see who's here, you know, and it's beautiful, but I would not want it to be a requirement. I know some people just feel they can sit with more focus without the distraction of the camera, the video.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for bringing it up, whoever it was. And should we take another?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, questioner asks, in this morning session, I found myself rather distracted by ruminations on upcoming work meetings throughout the day. During one sit, I had perhaps obvious but impactful experience of noticing that the thought and the reaction to the thought arise from the same place, creating a self-frustrating loop. Any insights into this experience?
Very helpful to see that. To really see, if you could see the sort of source, that origin point. Where is this coming from? Where is it coming up? And yeah, that also can kind of dislodge the story around it.
Right. And Valerie, maybe it's sort of rather like the previous example. You know, can you get from story to sensation in the body?
Yeah.
You know, there's I think it's a reasonable assumption that if there's, you know, rumination that's sort of hard to kind of break out of the loop of, go into the body and assume that somewhere you're going to find something that's uncomfortable and that you want to find it. You won't want to find it, but you do want to find it. The helpful thing is to find it. And then you sit with it and you find out kind of where it is in the body. What is it like? You can find out shape and dimension, and, you know, what quality of sensation is it? And what is it? How could I get to the place of letting this be here? That's the invitation. And I think in the process of doing that, you will automatically interrupt the loops of thinking. I mean, check it out and see if you find that's true.
Nice.
Dan will maybe, yeah.
This is a quote. A teacher wrote, quote, "If I rest my attention on what is real, then my mind and body are going to be increasingly saturated with the light of the truth," unquote. Is this what is happening when we are awake to the present moment, on the cushion or in ordinary life?
I don't know about that phrase, the light of the truth. I mean, I could imagine, you know, Unmon or somebody saying, no, you're just going to be right here. But, you know, that's enough. Why isn't that enough? This is all the light you're going to get. There's no other light, no other truth. How about that? I mean, I don't know who this teacher was, and maybe one of my own great teachers. I don't know, but it doesn't really. When Unmon was asked, he asked everybody, "What's your own bright light?" And his own answer to his question was the what is it? The kitchen and the temple gate. I may have slightly misquoted it, but what is my own bright light? The kitchen counter. Actually, he was also coming back to Samadhi. He was asked about Samadhi once, and he said, rice in the bowl, water in the bucket.
Yeah.
Is that being saturated in the light of truth? I mean, maybe you could put it that way. Well, what do you think, Valerie?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that language. It's funny. I come, in this other occupation from a discipline where truth with a capital T was really suspect. And yet, I've heard our own abbot often speak about the fact, but somehow that's, rice in the bowl, water in the bucket. And it did also make me think of one time I heard Rion Roshi talking about very openly about what he does when he's sitting. And he said sometimes it's shikantaza, sometimes it's really just mu. And sometimes he's asking himself, what do you really see? Now, I mean, I don't think he's sitting there running that question through his mind, but it's just looking, this like unfettered, unobstructed gaze and just checking, and something about his saying that was evocative. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's seeing truth or light in the sense of an object that you can see. I don't think so.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great. Yeah. I'm a little bit conscious of time. What do you think? Should we? Yeah. It'd be nice to have another sit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. Maybe Dan, we could just try to do one. Are there more, by the way?
Yeah, there's several more questions, but I can certainly hold them over and email them to the next host or tomorrow.
Valerie, do you have an inclination?
I think it would be nice to have one more round of sitting.
Okay. So then let's close this Q&A now, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe,
okay.
Just a very short break or whatever seems appropriate. Certainly appreciate really great questions.
Yeah. Questions and comments, always welcome. Thank you very, very much. Okay. And you can get in there with criticism if you want, really. Don't if you need to sort of get something off your chest or something, and go right ahead. I think I'm speaking for both of us, Valerie, but I think we can take it, can't we?